Hi, everybody. In this video, we're going to be talking about Unit 5.1.1, which is converting percents, decimals, and fractions. And the first thing we're going to do is, guess what? A definition. So we're going to talk about the word percent first for this first blank. And think about the terminology there. So what did per mean? Like that prefix per mean in the previous topic meant it was like a slash, it was a fraction, or we did a rate or a ratio. And then think about what this means, cent. What do you think that means? Cent, cents in a dollar, or century, it means 100. So this in fact means per 100. And so that's what we're going to fill in here. It's a ratio of a number to 100. It means percent means per 100, or how many out of 100. So again, use that always to help you, even if we have something like this, where it's like, this is one that's commonly missed. If we had something like that's 315%, and if I ask students to put that into fraction form, they'll put it over 1,000, but don't put it over 1,000. What does this mean? Percent. That means 315 over 100. You got 315 points out of 100. That would give you that 315%. So it's percent. So again, per 100. So that's how you would convert that one. So we are going to fill in these blanks here. So here are all of our conversions that we're going to work on down below in these examples. So in this table, we're just going to fill out kind of what the process is. So in the first one, when we're taking percents to fractions, we're going to put the percent over 100, just like I did for this example. We're going to put it over 100 and simplify if need be. Sometimes you don't have to simplify. So like 24, we would do 24%. So that would be 24 over 100. And then we would reduce that, and that would give us 6 over 25, because again, we're dividing by 4, divide by 4, and then that's going to give us 6 over 25 as a simplified fraction. If we are going from percents to decimals, we are going to divide the percent by 100, or move the decimal 2 places to the left. Or this one says move the decimal left 2 places. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. 105, if we divide it by 100, that's essentially taking this decimal, we move it 2 places to the left, and that's going to give us 1.05. And then here, and then this actually was just giving you a step here. So if it was 105%, where is that decimal? That decimal is at the end of that 105, and it's moving 2 places to the left, which again is going to give you 1.05. So I was just showing you another step there to that problem. All right. Decimals to percents. The next one we are going to multiply. So if we're taking a decimal, now we're taking this form, like if it was 15.1, and we say, okay, now let's take that, and we're going to take that decimal and change it into a percent. Well, this time we are going to multiply the decimal by 100, or we're going to move the decimal right 2 places. So here, if I'm multiplying by 100, that's going to move my decimal 2 places to the right, which is going to give me 3.1. Or you can just go with the decimals. You don't have to write the times 100. You can just go from here and go 1, 2, and that's going to give you 3.1 for that. What else? Oh, I'm forgetting my label. Sorry, decimals to percents. I forgot my label. So don't forget to put your label on there. That's a percentage now. You're going to put your label on that one too. Okay, now we're looking at our next step of going from a decimal to a fraction. If we are going from a decimal to a fraction, we've actually done this before, but we're just going to write the step in just to kind of remind you. Oh, excuse me. We would write the fraction as you would read the decimal and then simplify. So just like what we practiced when we were working on that decimals page. So like this 0.4, how many is that? Like, what is the place value? That's 4/10. So we are going to write it exactly out how we say it, 4/10, but then we need to simplify it. So let's take a 2 out of each of those. And it's going to be 2/5. 2/5. So then again, our next step, taking a fraction and we're putting it into a decimal, we are going to divide the numerator. Divide the numerator, so the top number, by the denominator, the bottom number. So we literally are just, this is a calculator exercise. You're taking 7, you're putting it in your calculator, you're dividing it by 2, and you should be getting out 3.5 for that. And then finally, and again, this is calculator. This is a calculator exercise. The last one here, we're going from fractions to percents. So first we are going to convert the fraction to a decimal. And then we are going to multiply the decimal by 100, or that's moving the decimal right 2 places. So again, let's say we are doing an exercise or we're doing a quiz or something, and unfortunately you didn't get a very good score. You got 5 out of 27. And you're like, I wonder what percentage that is. I don't think that's a very good percentage, but let's see. So 5 divided by 27. And if when I divide that, and again, I'm doing that in my calculator. So in my calculator, I did 5 divided by 27. And what I get is a repeating decimal. I actually get 0.185185, and it keeps repeating. So really what I'm getting is 0.185 with that repeating bar over it. But let's look at what my next step is. It says now multiplied by 100 and move the decimal right 2 places. So now I am going to, and you can go off of either one. We're going to multiply it by 100. We're going to multiply it by 100, which moves my decimal over 2 places to the right. So it's going to go 1, 2, or 1, 2. And then for each of them, it's going to be 18 point, and now it's going to be 518. And that 518 is going to keep going. 518, and that keeps going. Or you write out the answer 18.518, and then you can put that repeating bar over the 518. And then don't forget, because I forgot it last time, it's going to be a percent. So don't forget your label on there for those, that would be a percentage for that. Okay, so our next example. So, and let me back up for a second. All of these examples now, you can go back up and reference your table. So right here, it says write 36% as a simplified fraction or mixed number. Oh, excuse me. And as a decimal. So what we're doing with this first step, like with part A of this problem, we're taking a percent and we're moving it into a fraction. And then for part B, you kind of get your choice. You could either go back up and say, well, I'm going to go for my percent, and then I'm going to write it as a decimal. Or you can do your fraction that you found. So this is an or you can do fraction from part A, and we can write it as a decimal. So it kind of might depend on what we come up with for, like, let's see what happens in part A, and then let's see how we progress in part B. So for the first one, we're taking that 36% and we're writing it as a fraction. So you might come back up here and say, all right, where's the one that goes from percent to fraction? Right here. Here's percent to fraction. So I put the percent over 100 and I simplify. All right, that seems easy enough. Let's try that. So we're going to do 36% and we're going to put it over 100. And now we should simplify. So you could try taking out a 2, you could try taking out a 4. If we take out a 4, let's see what we get. Here we're going to get a 9, and here we're going to get a 25. So that looks pretty simplified to me. So there's our fraction, 9/25. And then we are going to look at letter B, where we do a percent to a decimal, or we can do a decimal, or we can do our fraction to a decimal. So you kind of have your choice here. I would probably take what I have right here at this point. And you can go ahead and just put it in your calculator, and you can do 9 divided by 25. Or if we're going from a percent to a decimal, we're just taking, we go back up here, percent to a decimal, and we're going to divide by 100, which means we're moving the decimal 2 places to the left. Or you take your fraction and you do 9 divided by 25, and you're going to get the exact same thing. So I'm kind of running out of space. I'm going to go to the left. So if I do 36% and I divide it by 100, that is the same as me moving that decimal, which it's right here, 2 places to the left. And so my answer is going to be 0.36. And so that's going to be my answer to part B. All right, so what I would urge you to do at this point is to pause the video. Pause the video. I want you to work on the rest of these problems here in your notes from 2 through 10. And it might take you a little bit of time, and that's okay. So I want you to take some time, go through it, and then come back and watch the video on hyperspeed and see how you're doing with the problems and if you got the right answers or not. And for the ones you don't get the right answers, go back and watch me go through that problem. All right, so here we go. Write 0.6 as a percent. So if I'm taking the decimal and I'm going as a percent, so come back up here, decimal 2%, we're multiplying by 100. So part A is I'm taking 0.6, I'm multiplying by 100. That moves the decimal 2 places to the right, 1, 2, which gives me a 60%. Hey, look at that, I remembered my label. All right, next one, it says to write it as a simplified fraction or mixed number. Well, I'm going to go back up to this, and that says 6/10. So I'm going to go ahead and write 6/10, which is going to be 3/5. Now, some of you might have taken this and said, well, I'm going to take that and put that into a fraction. If you did that, you would have instead gotten 60/100. And then maybe you divide by 10, and then you get 6/10, and then you divide by 2, which is going to give you 3/5. So you're going to get the exact same answer. Again, don't be afraid to try something different or do a different method. Just make sure you show your work, put your steps in there, and box up your answer. Okay, let's try the next one. Write 5.6% as a decimal and as a simplified fraction or mixed number. So let's go with the decimal part first. So if we're writing it as a decimal, again, if you need to, you can come back up here. We're going percent to decimal. That's this one. Divide it by 100. So we're going to do 5.6, divide it by 100. If you want to, you can put it in your calculator, or you can just move your decimal 2 places to the left. So I kind of show you both ways. So 1, 2, the decimal moves over here. You fill in the 0, and it's going to be 0.056. And then as a simplified fraction or mixed number. So here, I've had students come back here and say, oh, I'm going to go from this percentage, and I'm just going to write it as 5 6/10, and then I just have to reduce. That's not quite right, because here it's a decimal percentage, right? So in order to go from a percent into a mixed number or fraction, we come here. And we're going to put it over 100, and then we would simplify. So you can either start by doing 5.6%, and you can do 5.6 over 100, and then keep going from there. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here. Here's my decimal. This is tenths, hundredths, thousandths. That's 56 thousandths. So I'm going to do 56 thousandths, 56 over 1,000. And then I am going to choose to reduce here. And it looks like, it's looking like 8 is going to be the number that's going to come out, our greatest common factor. So let's take an 8 out, which is going to leave us with 7 over 125. 7 over 125. And then you should always check, like 7 over 125. Does that seem like that would be about a 5.6%? Yes. And if you're not sure, divide it back out. 7 divided by 125 should get you here. And then if you're changing it back into percent, you would multiply this by 100. And that gets you right back to where we started at 5.6%. So you can always check your work. All right, so let's look at the next one. Write 0.645 as a percent and as a simplified fraction. So for part A, writing it as a percent, I'm going to take 0.645 if you need to. We're looking at the part, take a decimal, change it into a percent. Go look at the directions for that. And we're going to go 1, 2. So that's going to give us 64.5%. And now we are supposed to write it as a simplified fraction or mixed number. I'm going to go back to my decimal form, and that's tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So that's going to be 645 thousandths. And this is going to end up reducing to 129. So it's like we're going to take a 5 out of here. 129 over 200. All right, so 129 over 200, and that's going to be our final answer. So then number 5, it says write 3/8 as a decimal and as a percent. All right, so 3/8 as a decimal, here's part A. So we're taking a fraction, putting it into decimal form, divide it in your calculator. Do 3 divided by 8, and in your calculator, you should get out 0.375. And then as a percent, I'm actually going to take what we got here at 0.375. I'm going to multiply it by 100. Again, that's taking a decimal, changing it into percent. Look at your steps up above if you need to. And that's going to move this over 2 places, which is going to give us 37.5% for our answer there. All right, let's check out the next one. So we've got 7 divided by 12 as a decimal and as a percent. So as a decimal, part A, divide it in your calculator, 7 divided by 12. And in your calculator, you should be getting, I'm going to erase this so I'm not writing in all of this. You should be getting 0.583 with that 3 is the repeating, because it's going to go 0.3333, or not point, it's going to be 0.58333333, so that keeps going. And then we're changing it into a percentage. So again, I'm going to take my decimal that I already have, and I'm multiplying it by 100. And that is going to give me, move the decimal over 2 places. That is going to give me 58.3 repeating. And make sure you don't forget to put that 0.3 repeating, and then don't forget your label too, the percentage. All right. Next one, we are taking a percent, we're writing it as a decimal. So we're taking our percent and we're writing it as a decimal. If you need to, go back up, check your work, see what we need to do. We should be dividing by 100. So we're taking this and we're going to go 1, 2, and that is going to be 1.15. Then we are writing it as a simplified fraction or mixed number. So here's your choice. You can either go back to here, and remember, it's not 115 over 1,000, it's percent. So it would be 115 over 100. Or this is the way I prefer to do it, because then you would need to simplify, right? So don't forget to simplify that. Or you can go from right here and you can say, well, if I say that, that's 1 in 15 hundredths. And then if I divide by 5, and again, you should get the same exact answer if you did it this way. When you divide by 5, you should get 1 and 3/20. Or if you left it as an improper fraction, you would get 23 over 20 by dividing this by 5 and dividing this by 5. So here are your two answers. All right, let's check out the next one. Write 2 7/8 as a decimal. So here's your choice. I personally normally go like this. I normally go, okay, well, as a decimal, that's going to be, it's going to be 2 point something. And to figure out the something, we have to do 7 divided by 8. And when you do 7 divided by 8, you should end up with 0.875. 875. If you don't like that method, if you're like, wait, where did that 2 point come from? Well, it's because we have two whole units, right? If you don't like that, you can come back and you can absolutely change it into an improper fraction. So you can do 8 times 2, which is 16, plus a 7 is 23. And then you would have 23 over 8. Let me make sure I did all my math right. 7, 8, okay. So you could do 23 divided by 8 in your calculator, just like we did here, except instead of a 7, it would be 23, and you would get 2.875. So your choice. If you do 23 by 8, your next step would be 23 divided by 8 equals 2.875. So choose. You don't have to do it both ways. Choose which one you like and write that way down. And then the next one, it says we are writing it as a percent. So taking it as a percent, well, I'm going to go back to my decimal form. My decimal form is 2.875. And if I'm taking a decimal form and I am changing it into a percent, we are multiplying by 100, which means I'm taking that decimal and it's going 1, 2, which should end up with 287.5%. 287.5%. All right, next one. We're almost there with these examples, and then we're going to check out some word problems on the next couple pages. All right, so this one, it says write 375% or 375% as a decimal. So we're going to do that first. So you can either do 375 over 100 and keep simplifying till you put it in decimal form, or I personally just like to divide by 100. And we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the left. Here's our decimal, 1, 2. So that gives me 3.75. And then as a simplified fraction or a mixed number. So again, your choice. You can either go back up to here and you can write it as 375 over 100 and simplify. Or I, again, like to go from decimal form and it would be 3 75/100. I'm going to take out a 25. So then I'm going to get 3 3/4. And that gets you into your fraction. Or if you want to leave it as a mixed or as an improper fraction, 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15, and that would be 15 over 4. So that would be what you got if you chose to do from here. If you chose to do 375 over 100, and then you divide by 25 and you divide by 25, you would end up right here. So again, your choice, you pick which way is most comfortable for you, and then make sure you show your work and circle or box up your answers. Okay, write 4.12 as a percent. So we're going from a decimal to a percent. So decimal to a percent, we're going to multiply by 100. And again, that's going to go 1, 2, and that's going to give me 412%. Awesome. And then we're writing it as a simplified fraction or mixed number. So I'm going to start right here, and it's going to be 4 12/100. And it looks like we could take out a 4. So let's take out a 4. And then we would get 4 3/25. And if you were leaving it as an improper fraction, if you chose to go from here and then simplify, because you would have 412 over 100 and then simplify. you should end up with, what is that, 103 over 25. So it looks like you'd be taking out a 4 out of both the numerator and the denominator, which makes sense. Like if we take out only a 4 at this stage, we're only going to be able to take out a 4 if we do it the other way. So here are your 2 different answers for that. All right. Hopefully now you've unpaused or taken me off super speed, and then we can go through these problems at a more regular pace. And then you can super speed me towards the end again when I have you try some. All right, so problems involving percents have 3 quantities to work with: the percent, the amount, and the base. And honestly, this is kind of Ed Reddy's terminology. They talk about this a lot during their videos and their text. And so that is why we in the developmental math classes, we are kind of focusing on that particular terminology, where we have a percent that the problem is going to talk about. We have our amount is kind of our result, the resulting amount or the result. And then the base is the original amount. Original amount. So here it says, identify the percent, amount, and base in this problem. 30 is 20% of what number? So before you identify those pieces, what I want you to do is to convert this phrase or this question here into mathematical symbols. So is typically an equal sign. Of is typically multiplication. So now knowing that, let's write it out. 30 is 20% of what number? So I'm gonna put an X in there. And then not only do we have to remember that, you know, the is equals, the of is multiplication, but we need to change this into decimal form before we put it into our calculations. So it's gonna be 30 is 20% of what number? All right, so that means if we're kind of labeling these, our 30 is going to be the amount because it's our result. The 20 is going to be our percent, and the X is going to be our base because it was our original amount. It's what we started with, and then we're taking 20% of it, and then we find out that 20% of that number is 30. All right, so now we're going to fill those pieces in over here. So the percent is the number with a percent symbol. That one's the easy one. So it's 20%, and then we're going to change that into 0.20. Then we've got the base, and it's the whole amount or the original amount, which in this case, it's the unknown in this problem, the X in this problem. Or you can write the unknown. It's what we're looking for. The unknown quantity. And then we've got the amount. The amount that is based on the percent. And that's going to be the result, or kind of our answer, or what's on the other side of the equal sign, which for this one is 30. So here's our formula. We're going to do percent as a decimal, percent times our base equals the amount. So the percent times the base equals the amount. Another really helpful thing that can help you here, you can always write this up in like a little triangle, and the P and the B go on the bottom. So we have P and B and A, and if we're going across, it's multiplication. If we're going up and down, it is going to be division. Well, what do I mean by that? So let's say that we have to solve for amount. So obviously I can't really do this on the screen, but put your finger over the A. So if you put your finger over the A on the triangle, and this is again, if we don't know what the amount is, we cover up the A, and what does it tell us to do with the other two quantities? It tells us to multiply them, percent times base. Now cover up the P. If we're looking for the percentage instead, cover up the P. Well, then we're taking the amount and we're dividing it by the base, which is where that division symbol comes in. Okay, what if we're finding the base? Put your finger on the B, and we're taking the amount, and then we're dividing it by the percent as a decimal. So always make sure that you're kind of keeping track of that as a decimal for this. And so we're going to put that into practice when we come down here. So number 1, it says write an equation that represents the following problem, then solve. So 50 is 22% of what number? So we're going to do a few things. We're going to identify what our percent and our base and our amount are. Because again, our formula is P times B equals A. And so we can come over here and we can do the exact same thing that we did up above. We'll say 50 is, and I'm going to go ahead and write this as a decimal, 22% of what number? So X is going to be my what number. So that means 50 is my amount. The percent is 22 or 0.22, and X is going to be in for my base. So now cover up the B because we're solving for the base. And the base is going to equal A divided by P, which is again what we're going to do here. We're going to take this, we're going to divide both sides by 0.22, which is A divided by P. So we know that we were doing that right. So 50 divided by 0.22, plug that into your calculator. I'm going to see what I get. 50 divided by 0.22, and that is going to equal, it looks like 227.27, and that 27 looks like it's repeating. So I'm just going to put the repeating bar over it. And so that ends up being my answer. So this is my base, is the 227.27 repeating. So let's check out another one. This one says identify the percent, base, and amount. No problem, because we're going to do that anyway. Percent, base, amount. Write an equation and solve. What percent of 72 is 9? So what are we looking for on this one? This time we're looking for the percent. The percent is our unknown. So this is X. Our base is 72. Our amount is 9. So we've got X times 72 equals 9. You can go back up to the triangle too if this is helpful for you. Cover up the P, because that's what we're looking for. Cover up the P, and we're taking A divided by B. So that's the other way you can do this. You can say P equals A divided by B. And so here it would be 9 divided by 72. And that's exactly what we're going to do. 9 divided by 72. And then that is going to end up giving us X equals 0.125. And then again, don't forget, we're going to change that back into a percentage. So we're going to multiply that by 100. That changes the decimal 1, 2 to the right. So X equals 12.5% for this problem. Okay, I would encourage you to pause the video right here and try out some more problems. There's this problem that you should be able to do on your own at this point. And then let's look at the next ones. Let's see if you can try them, see how you do. And if you're lost, come back and hit play on the video, and I'm going to walk you through it. But right now I want you to hit pause because you should be able to do this one on your own. All right, so percent, base, and amount. Says write an equation and solve. What is 110%? I'm going to change that into decimal, 1.10 of 24. So this time the amount is my unknown, because again, it's PBA. So not PBJ, but PBA, PB and A. All right, so our percent is going to be 1.10. Our base is 24. Multiply those guys together. So we're going to do 24 times 1.1 equals 26.4. X equals 26.4. And that's our final amount. And we don't have a label or anything. It doesn't give us a label. So we just write 26.4. Then you circle it up. Okay, so number 4. Number 4 says Jeff has a coupon at the guitar store for 15% off any purchase of $100 or more. He wants to buy a used guitar that has a price tag of $220 on it. Jeff wonders how much money will the coupon take off of the $220 original price? So what's the question? Like, what are we trying to figure out? And you should pause the video and try to think about this. Like, what is it that we're trying to find? And then you should write out, like, what is our question that we're asking? So pause the video. And then I'm hoping that you would think, okay, well, the question that I'm trying to figure out is, what is 15% of 220? So what is 15% of 220? So let's do this. What is 15% of 220? Now all you have to do is multiply them. So go ahead and multiply those and see what you guys are getting. I am getting, what did I get? 15% of 220 should be 33. X equals 33. And then what's our label? It would be $33 saved with that coupon. Saved with 15% off. So let's check the next one. Jennifer is buying a calculator. The price tag says it's $15, but she knows they're going to add an 8% sales tax. So this isn't in Montana because we don't have sales tax. So with it, where she's at, it's going to cost 8% sales tax. So what will the tax be? And then what will the total be? So this time we've got 2 questions. So the first thing, what is the tax going to be on that calculator? So we're not asking like, oh, it's 8%. Well, what is? So here's our question. What is 8% of 15? So what is 8% of 15? So we would say, what is 8% of 15? So multiply those together and you should get 120. Well, what does that represent again? That's the tax. So that's going to be $1.20. Now let's go back and finish answering the question. And it says, okay, what's our total going to be? Well, total is going to be 15 plus 120 equals $16.20. All right. So now I'm going to show you a different way on this. It's going to prep you for what we're doing in number 6. So please don't fast forward this. You need to watch this so that you understand what I'm going to do in 6 a little bit better. So I want you to think about this. Essentially what we're doing here is that we are taking 100% of the cost of the calculator, right? So like our total cost is going to be 100% of the cost of the calculator, which is 100% of 15. And then we're adding to that a sales tax, which is 0.0, well, I'm not going to do that yet, which is 8% of 15. So far so good. Our total cost is 100% of the cost of the calculator, which is $15, plus an 8% sales tax. So 8% of the cost of that calculator, which is 8% of 15. So now let's do a little factoring out. So if I factor out this 15, I get 15, and then that's going to be 100% plus 8%. Well, what are those two added together? It's 108%, right? So it's going to be 15 times 108%. Well, that's pretty easy. So now let's change that into a decimal form. So we've got 15 times 1.08. And if you multiply that out, guess what you get? 1620. Shocking, I know. But it's going to be 1620. So look at what we did here. That's exactly what we did. Here's 100% of the cost of the calculator. Here is 8% of the cost of the calculator, and then we added them together. Well, we're going to use this type of shortcut on the next problem because we're thinking 100% of the cost of the item plus the tax of that item is going to equal our total amount, right? So you should pause it and see with based off this information, you should totally be able to do number 6 on your own now. So pause it and see if you can do number 6 on your own. All right, let's see how you did. Evelyn bought some books at the local bookstore. Her total bill, so this time they're giving us the total, they're giving us this amount, is $31.50, which included a 5% sales tax. So how much did the books cost before tax? So what we're looking for is this piece, like we're looking for this original amount. So let's take kind of what we did here. And we're going to take, okay, we don't know what this piece is. So I'm going to say X. Well, what's our percentage that we're filling in? Our percentage is 100% plus the 5% sales tax. So 100% plus the 5% sales tax, which is going to give us 105%, which is going to give us, and sorry, on the right-hand side of this would be our total, $31.50, $31.50. And we're going to change this now into decimal form, which is 1.05 equals $31.50. Now you're ready to divide. We're solving for X, right? Well, how do we solve for X? Well, X is being multiplied by 1.05. Divide both sides by 1.05. And then when you take $31.50 and you divide it by 105, what are we getting? We're getting $30. X equals, you're going to get 30, but then don't forget your label. X equals $30. Well, what does that even represent? X is the original price of the books. So X equals $30, which was the original price of the books. Now here's one other way. If you prefer to do the PBA way, PBA, you can totally do it this way because our amount, our result would be $31.50. We're looking for the base. Our percent is 105%. And then you would change that to 1.05. You can totally still do it that way too. And so then our PBA would be exactly this line right here. So it'd be, your percent, which is 1.05 times your base equals your amount. And you can do it that way too. All right, 7 is a little tricky, so don't let it mess you up. So it says Susanna worked 20 hours at her job 1 week. So week 1 is going to be 20 hours. And week 3, so 3 weeks later, so actually, I guess that's week 4. If we're doing 3 weeks later, she's working 36 hours, moving on up. By what percent did her work hours increase? Now, one thing that's tempting to do is to say PBA. And we would, and again, this is not correct, but this is the temptation to say we don't know what the percent is. That's what we're looking for. And my base is 20 and my result is 36. And that's our temptation to do that. Well, thinking about like what we're doing here, the result, let me rewrite that. The result is not going to be 36 because it's talking like, let's go back here. So by what percent did her work hours increase? So it's asking for what was the increase in her hours. So what do we need to find between these two numbers? Like what was the percent of increase? Well, what is the increase? Her amount of hours increased by 16. So what we're actually doing here is we're finding the difference. Because this, think about it this way, this was the percent of well, and we're going to find the percent of increase. But this, so let me back that up so that's not confusing, because we're going to be finding our percent of increase. But this is the work hours, or the number of work hours increased. So it's by how much per work hours increased. All right, so now that we've got that figured out, so we're going to do PBA. And so we can do X times 20 equals 16. Divide both sides by 20. And I'm running out of space here. Let me get here. X equals, if you want, you can go ahead and reduce. And you're going to get 4/5, which ends up being, if you divide that out, it's going to be 0.8. And again, we're looking for a percentage. And so X equals 80% increase. And then look at that and say, does that seem to make sense? Does that seem to make sense that the amount of hours that she increased was an 80% increase? And that is true. So 80% of that 20 is going to be 16. And so 16 is an 80% increase of the 20, which is what gets her up to 36. All right, so now let's check out number 8. Number 8, there's all kinds of ways we can do this problem. So let's read it and we'll pick a couple ways. Jose gets paid 50% extra for working 8 hours on a holiday. And if he's paid $240, how much would he earn for working 8 hours on a regular day? All right, so here's one way. If we do percent and we do base and we do our amount. So our amount on this one would be like what we've ended up at. So we're finally being paid $240 for overpay, for essentially time and a half. And then our base is going to be what we're looking for. And then this 50% extra. So here you have to think about, well, is it 50% or is it 150%? What should it be? Well, I kind of answered it when I said, here's our time and a half. So the time and a half would mean that for our percentage, we're getting 100% of what we normally get plus 50% extra, right? So when we combine that, that's going to give us 150%, which as a decimal is 1.5. And now we're ready to plug it in and see what you get. So it would be 1.5x equals 240. Then we're going to divide both sides by 1.5. And then putting that in my calculator, 240, and I'm dividing by 1.5. Oh, I just subtracted 1.5. Okay, that should be 160. X equals 160. And then I would look back and say, does that make sense? Yeah, 160 to 240, a 50% increase. Okay, that would make sense. 50% of 160 is 80. And if I add 80 to 160, I get 240. And so just kind of like checking through that to make sure that that makes sense. So X equals 160 hours. Here's another way I was thinking about though, especially since we just got doing rates and ratios, I thought it'd be kind of fun to look at another way where it's like, well, here's a rates and ratios one we could look at. We could say, well, we know that we got paid $240 for 150% of work. And then we're trying to figure out how many hours did we get for 100% of work. And then let's change the percentages into, well, I guess if you wanted, you could leave them as percents. I'm going to go ahead and change them back into decimals. So we'd have 240 and we divide by 1.5 and we'd have X equals 1. And then you cross multiply and you'd have 240 equals 1.5 X, sorry, I forgot my X there because we're going like that. 1.5X, now you're dividing both sides by 1.5 and you get the same thing. X equals 160 hours. And so that gives you yet another way to solve it based off what we've already done. So hopefully that helps you guys out for that one. Okay, that is it for this video. Thanks for tuning in.